Hello and welcome. Is the UK-US trade agreement any good? Well, if you listened to the phone call between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump the other day, you would be forgiven for thinking that this was the most outstanding, practically unbelievable, amazing, earth-shattering deal that had ever been struck in recent living memory. Sounds good then. Let's have a read of what the BBC are saying about it. From this article. The actual substantive items that they negotiated are pretty narrow, said Stan Voiger, a senior fellow in economic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute. In some sense, you could say they basically took the status quo and made marginal changes and called it a deal. That doesn't sound very good. What's Keir Starmer saying about it? In the UK, Sir Keir Starmer, who also has incentive to want to be seen as a solid negotiator and a solid Prime Minister, leader, an empathic human, I would add, called it historic. In fact, Keir's been comparing it to VE Day. That's how historic he sees it. Reading on, while noting there was more work to be done. Surely detail, though. Steelmakers and car firms in the UK did express relief, saying the tariff rollback would help save jobs. So that's good. So there's definitely some good stuff in there. But, it was hardly missed on anyone that despite progress, goods from the UK are still facing higher tariffs than they were a few weeks ago. In the US, most analysts agreed that substantive benefits would be limited, despite the two sides discussing trade on and off for nearly a decade. Let's compare that then to what Keir was saying.
Was it 80 years ago today that victory came for Europe after and at the end of the Second World War? But of course, on that day, the UK and the US stood together as the closest of allies. And Donald, I think...
And so yes, he is comparing it to VE Day. I suspect someone noted the dates and said, hey, great opportunity, mention that because it gives you another excuse to remind Donald Trump how close this relationship is. And somebody somewhere, perhaps it was Keir's idea, also decided that it was a good idea to call Donald. And I wonder about that. I mean, you'll see it in the movies where someone is held hostage and the negotiator calls the individual who's been held hostage by their first name to humanize them. Maybe this is Keir's attempt to look like he's on the same level as the President of the United States. Newsflash, nope. There's one country who's the dominant one in terms of that relationship by almost any metric these days, whether the UK likes it or not. In fact, Keir maybe would have been better advised to call him Mr. President if they want to play to his ego. But no, Donald it is, because these two, they're titans on the world stage, like Batman and Robin. I wonder who's Batman. Anyway, let's go on.
You may or may not know that it was about this time of day, exactly 80 years ago.
So almost to the hour, reminding the president about the history, the closeness of the relationship.
That Winston Churchill...
And he's really going for this about this time of day. Winston Churchill, gosh.
Announced victory in Europe, and that led to great celebrations across Europe, across America, but particularly in the United Kingdom. Literally people going out into the street, putting bunting up, going up to the palace. And
I wondered initially why he was talking about the celebrations. That seemed to be a little bit incongruous, an extra detail that maybe wasn't required at that point in time. And then it becomes apparent. That allows him to mention the palace and hopefully stir up those great feelings of affection that Donald Trump has for the monarchy, and in particular, of course, the late Queen. I'm pretty sure the Keir's advisors behind the scenes have been saying, yeah, big things up, obviously, but also don't sound too desperate and try not to get into that mechanical, what you think is soaring rhetoric, speech pattern that you often use in Parliament. Just keep it a little bit lower key. But no, Keir, well, he jumps on the opportunity. This president, this prime minister. Have a listen to this.
The US and UK have been working for years to try and make a deal. And it never quite got there.
Yeah.
It did with this prime minister. So I want to just congratulate you.
Well, with this president, this prime minister, we've managed to achieve what many people have tried to achieve for many years.
That's right.
And I'm really pleased. And it feels completely historic and on a special 80-year anniversary as well. So, Donald, thank you so much. It's really good to have got this deal over the line.
And it's just about at that point that J.D. Vance looks like he wants to take that speakerphone and throw it right out the window. So there we have it. The hyperbolic version versus what the BBC is writing about the deal. I repeat, in the US, most analysts agreed that substantive benefits would be limited, despite the two sides discussing trade on and off for nearly a decade. And the word on the street is that, no surprise, Donald Trump likes to strike deals. And he feels good about the fact that a deal has been made. And at least with Donald Trump, in terms of that stuff, kind of what you see is what you get. He just loves it. Keir Starmer, there's a whole other thing happening here. He is desperate to be seen as someone who is credible. Not only as some kind of negotiator, when of course it was his team who did that, but also as some kind of important, substantive world leader. What do you think? Is that a great deal? Does Keir now sound more statesman-like? Or did he, in that call, sound perhaps a little bit desperate